Well, thanks everyone. Welcome to this webinar, ELP webinar. So the topic today is shown on this opening slide, building capacity in nature positive enterprise. And this is, it's a really important area for the Endangered Landscapes Programme to be working and supporting our various projects. So as you know, one of the kind of themes of the ELP is its landscape scale approach. And all of us working in landscapes, we know that landscapes are shaped by the economy, by activities, whether it's fishing or forestry, agriculture, or indeed management for products such as deer and grouse in some of our projects. So the economy is absolutely critical. And supporting economies that are nature positive is therefore something that pretty much I think all of our projects are interested in. And being able to do that at landscape scale as well, and not just at the level of individual businesses. So this was a project, one of the ELP's Advancing and Applying Knowledge projects that was selected for funding right back in 2021 call, and it's just completed. And many of you will have participated, I think, in some of the online sessions and maybe in the Turkey Knowledge Exchange visit, where there were sessions, again, that were hosted and run in partnership with FFI, the leader of this project. So the project has recently completed. It's produced some amazing outputs that are now available on the ELP website in the resources section. And I think we'll be sharing a link to those separately for those that haven't already seen them. I'm going to move right in now and just kind of introduce the outline for the meeting, and obviously leave it to the FFI team to talk more about the project and what they've achieved with your participation. So we're going to have an introduction to the knowledge product and the different chapters within that from Murray. We're going to then move on to an introduction to the finance tool from Rona, an introduction to the developing strategic partnership rule from Vivian, and then there's going to be an opportunity for you to feed back and ask questions before Kieran wraps up with describing some of the next steps. So that's the kind of framework for the next what is it, hour and 15 minutes. So as I say, welcome, and I'm just going to hand straight over to the FFI team.
Thanks, David. Perfect. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It's been a journey for people who have participated in the project. If you remember, we had quite a lot of online sessions, but the exciting part is there was quite a lot of interesting discussions and sharing of learning that happened during the project, and then we have some amazing outputs. So we will go into those output launch. But just before we start, in case you don't know us, so Fauna and Flora is a conservation NGO based in Cambridge. We have projects in 40-odd countries. Within FFI, we have the social equity, agriculture, and enterprise team who looks at site-based projects and impacts with communities. And within the SAGE team, we have the enterprise and finance program. So I lead the program of work with Rona, Mrunmai, and Vivian, from whom you will hear a lot today. Just to summarize what was the AAK project with ELP that we did, the project objective was to support conservation NGOs like yourself and your partners within the landscape and seascape that you're operating in, to set up enterprises that have very clear biodiversity and social outcomes. So that sharing of technical skill sets was important. In parallel was sharing some of the amazing experience ELP partners already have in enterprise development, so that people who have that experience pass on that learning to people who are starting it, so that overall, as a collective group, we maximize the likelihood for these enterprises to be successful. Quick summary of the key activities and outputs we did. We did online sessions, probably 5 online training on different modules on enterprise development. We developed we co-developed knowledge products with yourself and with Cambridge Judge Business School. And it's not just a pure technical document. We have brought in case studies from ELP partners and elsewhere in other country programs who are trying to set up enterprises. So it just brings in the practical knowledge along with the technical business knowledge. We have provided mentoring sessions on enterprise and finance. There was knowledge exchanges in terms of investor event, external speakers, and as David mentioned, we participated in the Turkey ELP knowledge exchange visit, where it was a great opportunity to spend time in person with some of you guys. Before we start, just to clarify, what is nature positive enterprise? As you know, there's quite a lot of discussion and everybody's trying to understand what nature positive means. So from an enterprise perspective, I think the key part is the business should be financially viable. It should sustainably use, whether it's the natural or the social capital in the landscape that you're operating in. It should attract or generate sustainable finance, and it should really benefit the local communities. So these are the key aspects that we are looking at when we say the term nature positive enterprise. To provide an overview of the knowledge products that was developed as part of the project, I'm not going into the details, so Mranmay, Rona, and Vivian will be talking through into the details, but just as an overview, it starts with assessing what are the business opportunities or sustainable finance opportunities in your landscape or seascape, then designing a good business model, as I mentioned, which is financially viable, then how best to launch it. If you need finance, there is a tool that is being developed. If you're looking for partnership, there is another tool that's available, and then how to manage those enterprises. So this is the 4 key steps, the methodology which FFI used, and I'll pass over to Mranmay to talk in detail through each of these.
Thanks for that overview, Kiran. So most of you have attended the sessions as part of this program, already aware of the steps involved in setting up and launching and then managing the nature positive enterprises here. But what we are doing here is to give an overview of what the practitioner's toolkit also contains, which was also extensively covered in the sessions that were conducted as part of this program. So there are 4 sections in the practitioner's tool. The first one, of course, is assessing opportunity. Second one is designing the enterprise and then launching, and then finally managing. In the first section, so what we are really looking at is to assess the landscape here itself. So before assessing the landscape, what we need to keep in mind here is the impact that the enterprise, when it is started, wants to achieve. So any nature positive enterprise, as we understand, aims to achieve 3 main impact. One is ecological, the second one is social, and the third one is economical. So keeping that in mind, we assess the nature positive products and services that are available in a given landscape that are sellable, and also where it can generate revenue, both for the local communities as well as for the enterprise itself for sustainability and to plow back the profits towards conservation activities. So here we look at different kinds of natural capital, whether it is biodiversity value, it could be wildlife viewing opportunities, or agriculture commodities, or the natural beauty of the landscape, or water, for example. And then we make a big list of available opportunities in terms of nature positive products and services. Then we also assess the local economy in terms of how the market is functioning in the landscape, what is the connectivity of market in the landscape, infrastructure availability, financial systems that are available, and the actors that are available in the local landscape. We also try to study the people and the society in the given landscape in terms of understanding the population, the social organizations, values, cultures, as well as the governance systems that is available in that is already functional in these landscape. And finally, we also try to understand the macroeconomy in the landscape, or also outside of the landscape in a given country or in a state or a province, to understand ease of doing business to reach the impact that we want to attain for nature positivity. Also credit rating of the country and the skills available in the country, the kind of stakeholders that we will have to work in the landscape. We make extensive assessment of these opportunities in the landscape before also deciding about the sustainable financing goals that we want to achieve through this enterprise. And then we align these opportunities towards the larger theory of change in the landscape itself to address the conservation objectives of the given landscape. So once we develop the long list of options that are available in the landscape, we use this tool called option analysis to narrow down on the options to identify a manageable list of options that we can take to the next step. So this is a tool that is developed to help the practitioners make right decisions in terms of suitability of the products. So what we do here is to list down all the long list of options and also score each one of them against a predefined set of criteria. For example, in this tool, we have identified some of the criteria like commercial viability, scale of impact it can help achieve, alignment with the vision of the landscape, inclusivity and technical capacity, business risk, and so on. We score each one of them between 1 and 5. As it is explained here, and then whichever option gets the highest is the likely option to be chosen to be the nature positive product or services to be chosen. Here is a real case study from ADEPT, where different options for ecotourism, wild harvest, and agriculture commodities or agroforestry commodities were considered. Each of them were scored, and finally, as you can see here, cheese production and livestock got the highest score, which was taken ahead as part of the business plan. What we also do in the landscape assessment is understand the enablers in the landscape. There are different sets of enablers that provide an environment for the business to succeed. For example, at the site level, supply chain, if we are choosing a supply chain as a business, understanding the like-mindedness of the private actors, physical infrastructure, access to finance, and at the enterprise level, examples such as the technical capacity of the staff themselves to be able to manage the business, and having good financial and organizational structures to support the operation of the business. And at the macro level, as already mentioned, the credit ratings and the ease of doing business and the supportive environment in the country. Based on these assessments, then when we have finalized what is the nature positive product or service that we want to take ahead, we now start designing the business itself, which is explained extensively in the second section of the practitioner's tool, which is the design, which is a second chapter in the tool. We use another tool called business model canvas. This is a very simple tool that is developed not by Fauna and Flora, but this is something that is developed by Strategizer, as a license number is also given there. So this tool is specifically made for startup businesses, but it is also applicable for nature positive enterprises in the conservation context. So what it helps us is to first of all define the objectives, vision, mission, and values for the business, and then identify what customers based on the product or service that is already chosen. who will be the customers, how will we manage the relationship with them, what marketing channels do we use, and what value proposition are we choosing here to sell the product or commodity? How are we going to manage the operations of the business in terms of identifying key resources required, key activities, partnerships required? In terms of finances, what are the revenue sources? How do we generate? How much profit do we expect? What expenditure are we likely to incur? What are the streams of costs that are likely to be incurred? And governance structure in terms of what management rules, how the stakeholders will be engaged, how in terms of operational rules and set of guidelines coming up with that, and finally defining what impact it will achieve and what risks are the enterprise likely to achieve. This is at a very high level, but as we get deeper into developing the design, once we start identifying the revenue sources, for example, in the finance section, once we identify cash flow in terms of start making projections of how the products or services will generate revenue, what investments, what grants will we take, we should be able to also narrow down on some specific numbers there in terms of how much investment is required, how much revenue is it going to create on an annual basis, what profits would it generate, what costs would it do. So we should be able to narrow down on numbers as well, for example. So the tool has specific sections for each one of this. For example, value proposition itself has a tool. The practitioner's toolkit gives step-by-step guidance on how to develop a value proposition, for example. For each of these sections, there are different steps involved, which is explained quite extensively in the practitioner's toolkit. This is an example to just quickly run through from Mediterranean Conservation Society, where the objective is to reduce the invasive aquatic species, which is a fish species, which is also to commercially make it viable for consumption by tourists and restaurants, by selling it in the restaurants in Turkey, and then marketing channels that they plan to use is like social media, existing network of restaurants and hotels. And then the value proposition is really novelty seafood and also beyond sustainable to positive environment impact, because this is an invasive species of fish, which is not positive towards environment conservation or the marine conservation here, which is what is being sold, which means it's reducing the impact in the marine environment. So it's really beyond sustainable to positive environment impact. That's the value proposition here. Key resources, they require cold storage, relationship with the fishery communities, managers and marketing and sales staff, extensive partnerships required with fishing cooperatives and social media influencers, ministry, and also the chain of restaurant association locally. They've identified the revenue sources from sale of invasive species of fish itself, and also from some grants to set up the enterprises and manage operations. The profits has been going back to the NGO, as well as some part of it is reinvested into the growth of the enterprise itself. Costs involved are staff and consultant cost, storage facilities, transportation facilities, marketing and promotions. The governance and management rules also, like it's completely 100% owned by the NGO, which is a special purpose entity, and integrated management into the NGO, Mediterranean Conservation Society. And only the rule is also that they buy fish only from the cooperatives working with the NGOs. So this is how typically a business plan is developed during the design stage to take to the next stage. So with this now, the enterprise becomes ready to launch, and what are the steps to be that one should be considering at the time of launch is covered in the third section of the practitioner's toolkit. Here, there are different stages involved. First of all, we look at the legal incorporation of the enterprise itself, if the enterprise is not yet set up. So at this stage, there are various aspects to be considered by the practitioners here. One is to really look at the laws that are prevailing in a given country where one is operating. The tool gives some details about what are the considerations to be made with respect to legal incorporation, but I think it's worth mentioning here that we are not professionals to give legal expertise or advices. So it's always best to consult lawyers or legal experts in the countries where you're all functioning to get the best advice for suitability of legal structures to meet the objectives of the enterprise. And finally, there is an important step that is involved in terms of raising capital. Rona is going to speak about it in detail and the different kinds of capital that are available and how to make a decision about it. Marketing in terms of marketing the product or the services in terms of branding, pricing, finalizing some of the deals, going about promoting it extensively to attract customers, and then establishing necessary partnerships at the landscapes or beyond the landscape, which Vivian is going to cover. And then equitable benefit sharing. When stakeholders are involved, some of the decisions in terms of how benefits would be shared with the stakeholders, what is a profit that will go to the NGO or to the retain with the enterprise, these decisions must be made well in advance to avoid any kind of conflicts at the later stage. And then finally, how the available capital, how would it be divided between different assets or between the operations, investments, how investments will be made. These decisions will be made and implemented. The day-to-day finance management and operations management for cost effectiveness and for effective management of business. These are the different kinds of activities that are involved at the launch stage, as well as once the launch is done. Finally, it is about day-to-day management of the activities, which is in the 4th section of the practitioner's toolkit, where we look at adaptive management, day-to-day adaptive management, because once a business is launched, it is subject to various challenges, such as competition from other actors, commercial actors mainly, and also some of the shocks in terms of changes in demands and supply, and also policy, government policy, interest of the customers. There are different kinds of challenges that we come across. How do we adapt our management to meet the requirements despite these challenges and address the challenges? Then the next one is strategic alignment of the business. It's always important to keep up to the vision and the mission of the enterprise to achieve 3 main impact, which is ecological, social, and economical, to keep assessing where exactly the enterprise is currently, what is the direction in which it has to move, and how to go about reaching that impact. Aligning these interests often and reflecting on it is very important. And conflict management, conflict could come up in different stages within the enterprises, within the board, outside the enterprise, with the stakeholders at different stages that sometimes cannot be expected. So it's good to have, as good practice, it's always best to have good practices defined in terms of developing standard operating procedures, grievance mechanisms, transparency, and also regularly meeting. The board must be meeting regularly, everybody taking good interest in sharing information, and also ensuring that the power dynamics doesn't always concentrate in one place or with one person. Finally, when the business is operating very well, that's the stage where one can look at diversification of income through diversification of products and services, and then scaling up business. At the end of it, very important is also to ensure that the enterprise also sticks toward the ethics that it wants, it defines, and it continues abiding by. Just to wrap up, I would also like to mention that the toolkit really has many tools, many small tools. For example, there is a tool specifically for governance mechanism, like we saw for business design and option analysis. And there are multiple tools which are very helpful for the practitioners to use and help make decisions, especially for those who do not come from business background. And before finalizing and before launching these businesses, it's worth going through these steps, multiple stages, consult people, get opinion, incorporate different perceptions to strengthen the business model before going ahead. And also last is that it's not really easy to develop businesses and launch and make it run profitably. Initial stages are very difficult. It's considering several challenges that are involved. It's always worth strengthening the business case as much as possible. And we are always available if any help is required when you're designing your business. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrunmayee. So I'm gonna now talk about the tool that Mrunmayee mentioned for when you come to financing your enterprise. So maybe the challenge that you're facing is that you've completed your business model and you've got an investor pitch ready to go, and you're wondering what sort of investor is likely to be interested in financing your enterprise. So the solution that we've come up with, we've got an exciting new interactive tool for you, which uses information which you provide on your nature positive enterprise in order to provide recommendations on which sources of funding are most appropriate for your enterprise. So as I mentioned, it's an online tool. The web address is up on screen, and there's a screenshot of what the web page looks like when you land on it. The way it works is it takes an input, so it takes information on your nature positive enterprise. So it uses a short survey on 6 different aspects of your nature positive enterprise, around the maturity of your business or how long it's been running for, about the profitability or the expected profitability and the potential to scale, on the social and ecological impact of your business, on how soon you need the funding, and on the size of the funding which you require. So it should take about 3 to 5 minutes if you've got this information available, and it should all be information which you know off the top of your head, more or less. But you will need an idea of the size of the funding required or the projected profitability. So it's probably a good idea to have financial projections done before you use this tool. So behind the scenes, for each set of questions that you complete, the logic is scoring your inputs against a set of different investor categories, which includes philanthropy, venture philanthropy, angel investors, private investors, bank loans, and microfinance. So again, kind of behind the scenes, just as an understanding of how the tool works and how it uses your information. Just to note that the tool or the website doesn't store any of your information, so there's no way that it can kind of use your personally identifiable information. We don't have any access to that. So this is an example of how one of the sets of questions, so I mentioned there are 6 of them, so this is an example of how one set of questions uses your information to give a recommendation. So it works like a logic tree. So in this example, the set of questions would run like this. So you answer, is your enterprise currently operational? If you say yes, you then answer, is it incorporated or do you plan to incorporate it? If you say yes, it then asks you, does your nature positive enterprise have financial statements and a track record? And if you answer yes to that as well, based on that information, the tool will recommend that you could look at funding sources like venture philanthropy, angel investors, impact investing, and bank loans. So just to note, this is an example of one of the sets of 6 questions, and your answers to the other sets will be aggregated with the answers to this one to give an overall recommendation. So just because in this example, the answers to these questions might recommend venture philanthropy, that doesn't take into account those other aggregated answers that you've given. So by the time you've completed the tool, the suggestion might look quite different to what's on screen here. So as I mentioned, the output is a set of results which so aggregates your results from each of those kind of decision trees, and it will give you a results page like this. So it says your answers, this is just an example, but it says your answers suggest that you should explore the following options. In this example, it's venture philanthropy, angel investors, and a bank loan. And then it says the following sources of funding are less likely, but we recommend exploring them in the context of your landscape before ruling them out. And under that is philanthropy and microfinance. And then at the bottom of the results page, it says, if you read the corresponding description for each of those investor categories, or if you click on the term in the menu at the top of the page, it will give you more information on each suggested option. And you can see on the right-hand side of the page, there's a screenshot of the additional information which is provided if you, as I say, scroll down or click on the option in the menu bar. So these are just to caveat that with these are just categories of investor, and there are, so it's not directing you to kind of live funding opportunities, and there are other resources which you can use and which we can provide if you are interested in access to live funding opportunities, and we'll continue to share these on our LinkedIn community of practice.
Can we just check if everybody can hear you?
There was some background noise. We were just checking that I was audible while I was saying that. There was a car alarm going off. Thumbs up. Okay, I'll keep going. So yeah, just to another caveat that they're just, the suggestions are just a best fit for a best fit source of funding according to the information that you've provided, and just to note that more research would be required on each of those sources of funding in the context of your landscape or seascape. And it's a newly launched tool, and so if you come to testing this out for your own enterprise, we very much welcome any feedback that you might have on this tool, and I hope you find it useful. I am now handing over to Vivian, who will talk you through the partnerships tool.
Thank you, Rana. So as the second add-on tool, continuing from Rana's, we have also developed the strategic partnerships toolkit. So as Myrmay also mentioned, launching and managing a business is very difficult, and having strong partnerships will make this easier, specifically when we're talking about landscapes. So this toolkit provides a way to assess the current key sectors and businesses in your land or seascape, and the potential strategic partnerships that would promote a nature positive economy. So as I just mentioned, why is a partnership strategic? Well, a partnership is a powerful way of tackling issues within a nature positive enterprise, and can also drive growth and deliver needed capabilities if chosen and managed correctly. So this toolkit is comprised of 5 different tabs. This is actually in an Excel sheet, but the guidance is in a very lovely and well-designed PDF, so it's visually appealing. And in the second slide, I'll show how it looks. But basically, you work through it through a QR code, and then that will open up an Excel, and then you'll have each of these components are in their individual tab. So you do the first tab and that will allow you to continue to the second tab and so on. And you'll start with a big list of different sectors and strategic partners that could be potential. And then at the end, you'll have like a refined list of what makes sense for you. So the first one is identifying key sectors. The second one is impact influence matrix. The third one is a partnership fit test. The fourth is a SWOT analysis, which is a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. And the fifth is a stakeholder workshop, which we also have a guidance on how to develop the workshop. So this is how it looks like in the PDF document. And this is the first tab. So it gives you a bit of text of how to guide you through that and how you are able to fill in the actual tab. And you'll open up the QR code and then that will show you the Excel document. So that's just one example. Then the next one, and this is the second tab. So each of the tabs have this introduction and guidance on how to use with its individual QR code. So then the first tab is identifying the key sectors, and this is what it actually looks like. It's a screenshot. So you're going to be able to list all the different sectors and then specifically to, for example, agricultural sector, tourism, local commerce. There's more, but this is just part of the screenshot I was able to get. So then you'll be able to identify and name them. You'll be able to understand if there's a common linkage, what opportunities for collaboration, what challenges might there be, and if this makes sense to, go forward or not go forward. A lot of this information can be available already to the person who's filling this in. And if not, you can also go to your local chamber of commerce or other type of entity that could give you more information about what enterprises exist in these sectors. So then after filling out this tab, you'll be able to go to the second tab, which is the impact and influence matrix. So the list of Go partners that you identified in the previous tab, you'll have, and you'll fill in the left side of this matrix. And then you'll be able to understand how does each of these fit into a power and influence and level of interest matrix. So basically, this also has a guidance of how to, how to decide if this is someone that should be managed closely, so someone that has a high potential, or a lower potential, but throughout the guidance, you'll be able to understand where to put each of your Go partners that was identified in the previous tab. Then you'll go to your third tab, which is the partnership fit test. And this is also a small screenshot, but basically it's different type of questions, which is based off of the business model canvas. So what Murmay showed before of having the objectives, the customer, the resources, the financial bit, the governance, all of that is here in the categories. And then you'll have specific questions that you should be asking yourself about these potential partners. So you'll be able to look at each of these questions. There's some guidance notes of, how to guide you. For example, will there be an additional customer segment accessed through the partnership? And there's a guidance note on, for example, a new customer segment, such as bird watchers, can be accessed if partnering with an enterprise that offers bird watching. And perhaps you are someone who does ecotourism, but you are focused on adventure tourism, more like hiking and rock climbing. So perhaps if you do a partnership with them, you'll be able to gain a different type of customer. And therefore, you'll be able to say yes, maybe, no, and that at the end of this Excel sheet, it's all formulated to give you an end score. So after that score, you'll be able to continue and say, okay, that's a go or no go. And then here in this fourth tab of the SWOT analysis, the same, you'll be able to record the previous partners that were identified. And now you'll have a more refined list. And now you're going to be able to assess what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of this partnership. And there's a little box on the right just to point out different things you should be having in mind. And also this SWOT analysis can be done individually, or it can also be done as part of the workshop, which is the fifth tab, to the next one. But if you're not doing a workshop, you can leave it there and you can do it, individually with the information you have. But sometimes this is better, more minds think in a better way, right? So I think if this is done in a workshop, it'll be easier to understand what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And it will be easier with that information to then have a joint vision. What's the exact opportunity you can achieve or get to with this partnership? What are the challenges? And what's the action plan? So who's going to do what, the timeline. So, and all of this has, on the next slide, a guidance on how to develop the workshop methodology. This is just as well a screenshot. It's much longer. And it does go step by step on how to deliver the workshop and have a good and practical result at the end of it. So that's the strategic partnerships toolkit. And over to Kieran, I think, for a Q&A.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Vivian. So as you've seen, there's quite a lot of exciting tools and guidance that has come out of this project. The next key step is to actually, share that knowledge product as far and wide as possible, so that it really helps people who are at the initial stages of trying to set up an HR positive enterprise. So we have quite a detailed plan worked out in terms of dissemination, but the documents have already been uploaded into the ELP website, so you can access them. And if in your network, if you think of anybody who can benefit from this knowledge product, please do share them. We would also like to say that, as you may have noticed in the discussion so far, there's quite a lot of technical part involved, like tables, templates. So we have an ongoing support from ELP under the AAK grant, where we would like to actually, try to get this guidance document more used, especially with ELP partners who are new to this tools and approaches. So that project we are aiming to start next year. And we would like to adopt a training of trainer approach, so that it's not always, FFI trying to, support and provide technical support. We would work with ELP partners who are already having that experience in enterprises, so that they could train the new cohort of ELP grantees. So we would like to take that more of a sustainable approach. So that's something which we would try next year. I just want to also flag that as part of this project, we have set up a community of practice in the LinkedIn. I would say it was quite hard. We tried multiple platforms. We tried, finally, we have gone with LinkedIn. If you're interested in this topic, please do join and share what you're learning, or if you have any questions, please post them there. There may be somebody in the community who may have answers or have worked on similar kind of issues. So we can probably problem solve some of these issues together. Maybe next slide. Okay, cool. So that's from us. I think the next agenda point, David, is the Q&A session. I think we have been good on time. So we have a good half an hour for Q&A.
Yes, you've done really well. So it can be that people put a message in chat that they will put their hands on.
Maybe you can stop sharing and we can see.
Thanks, Kieran. So I'm sorry, just to be clear, am I chairing the chat, or are you doing this, Jane?
If you're happy, David.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a chat function if people would like to put questions there. But otherwise, I think I've got most of your, I can see most of you on my screen. So either put your hand up, your Zoom hand, or just kind of wave your hand if you have a question for one of the FFI team. Please don't be shy. Anyone with questions, or we can ask you questions if you're not careful. So
If nobody asks me questions, I've got
Bill.
Yeah, hi everyone. That was a really great presentation, a great piece of work. This is going to be a very UK specific question, and you may not have the answer to it, but I'm just wondering, are there any particular business structures that fit the kind of nature positive enterprise mode? I'm thinking things like CICs, community interest companies. Are there any particular models that kind of fit that approach in a kind of business, legal business, quasi-legal business sense?
I can take that, Bill, and thanks for the question. So during that part of the ELP training, we have looked at KIC, the CIC model, and we have shared some information there. I would say that, yeah, it's a very interesting model and it's quite unique to UK. So probably what we see is quite a lot of nature positive enterprises will fit into that model, that legal structures in the UK. Whilst we look at other countries, it gets a little more complicated. There are, enterprises, social enterprise registrations, which are available in some of the countries. They are not perfect. They come with plus and minuses. It depends individually on different legal regulations in each countries. What we would like ideally to have is, if there is a social enterprise model, and if there is a way to mission lock the conservation impact of that enterprise, that will be really great. It's something which FY is trying to look at in another country, to mission log that, and that will be a good practice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran, and thanks, Bill, for the question. Any other questions or comments on what you've seen? Maybe whilst you're all thinking, I just have a question. Kieran, maybe you could just talk about language. I know that you've produced the toolkit in a Russian version, which I think is particularly to address some of FFI's target audiences. And I guess this is probably a question for those of you out there as well, is the extent to which you think the language is a major issue. You finished up by saying that you have an ambition to roll this out and disseminate as far as possible. What have been your thoughts in terms of the dissemination and use of language, different language versions?
I guess from our side, as part of the current project, yes, we have definitely have an English version, and we have a Russian version translated and proofread. Ideally, we would like to, if it's really important, if there is a demand from the LP grantees, then we could look at other language translations as well. The content is there. It's more about translating it, because we have seen like there are quite a lot of online tools which are available, which can do that immediate translation if needed, or we can do it something separately. But as of now, yeah, we only have it in 2 languages, and apologies if that is a barrier. During the ELP project, language didn't become as a barrier. We ran all the sessions in English, and thanks to the participant, everybody who participated, at least they could all communicate in English.
Yeah, I think that's right, Kieran. Most of our grantees, you know, they have good English skills, or you know, most of the staff members. I guess it was the wider rollout, and maybe that's something that we should think about if there is scope or interest in that. David Bliss.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Yeah, we're up in Cumbria in the LP with Bill, and I'm just wondering, would it be possible if we build in the toolkit, which I seem to understand, we could get our heads around that. Presumably, then there's a response from you. Is there? You know, we actually talk to someone about it, or you know, how do we take it forward from the stage of filling the toolkit in?
Sorry, David. So your question is, you have the knowledge product available. How can you take it forward, right?
Yeah.
So I feel there are two steps, plus just feel free to jump in. One is the document is quite detailed and talks through each steps. So it's quite, as the title says, it's a practitioner's toolkit. So because we are all practitioners, so we have kept that as our target audience. So the language, the methodology, everything is quite, you know, practical. So our hope is, in the first instance, you should be able to go through the tools with the guidance document that is produced.
Got it.
If you're not able to, that's the next year project that I mentioned under the AEK grant, where we would do some similar kind of training sessions, where, you know, this particular knowledge product will be more socialized. So that could be the next opportunity. I don't know, David, do you have any?
What happens? Sorry, what happens at the end? Once we get to the end of it, how do we take it forward? Assume we're successful with the toolkit. You introduce us to somebody, or the toolkit introduces us to a benefactor or an investor?
So the first knowledge product around is around developing the business model. So once you have the business model case developed, probably what you can look at, usually the biggest problem then is accessing the finance. So you could look at the finance tool, which is also a developed part of the project.
Yeah.
And then you would probably have to do some research. There will be some guidance on what kind of investors to look at. And then it's up to the person to actually do some research and identify funding opportunities. That could solve most of the, then if you have the capital, then, you know, you can test the model and then take it forward from there.
Thank you.
And we can continue to use the community of practice to share live opportunities as they come up, but it won't be kind of a fully extensive range of what might be out there. So yeah,
good point, Rona. What we have been doing in that community of practice, whatever funding opportunities we are coming across, we are posting it there. So some of the latest database on donors looking at nature positive enterprise, we have already posted. And there have been further tools on finding funding for biodiversity conservation work. So all what we are learning, it's all captured in that community of practice.
Thanks, Kieran. Any other questions? So Kieran, I wonder, who was that?
Sorry, David, that's me. Yeah, I couldn't find the hand tool. I was looking, and you know what? I realized I have my own hand. I could have just done that, couldn't I? But there we go. Anyway, No, I just had a question, Kieran, that was about the community of practice. As you say, you'll be sharing sort of finance opportunities and things that you're learning. Like, are there things that you would want us also to share and examples and things like that? Like, how would you see that? Because I've only just like accessed the link now and requested to join, so I haven't seen it before, but what kinds of things are you hoping other projects will share?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Kat. Ideally, we would like to become as silent as possible and have more people, contributing and sharing lessons and knowledge there. So yeah, whatever we learn from FI side, we will post it. But we would really like, the practitioners like yourself to post content on anything related to enterprise. If say your business is doing something innovative, something new and exciting is happening, that's the platform to share. Or it could be a situation where you're facing some challenge. You have a tourism product and you're looking for the markets. Maybe you can post it there because somebody else must have found some opportunities they can share. It's more for collaboration because, as an enterprise, we are not in a competitive business space, right? So we should be less worried whether this create more competition for the enterprise, more about, how we can collectively move forward and drive nature positive outcomes at a landscape level.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into that then. See, I'm sure we have some good examples from Turkey that we can share.
Thanks,
Kieran. Before I come to you, Sarah, just a follow-up question on that group, Kieran. I mean, so is that going to be a group just for ELP, or are you going to open it up? Is it open to, if any of our, projects have, links locally, nationally with organizations that they think might have something contribute and might like to participate? Can they get access and join the group? What, what are the boundaries to the group?
Boundaries, if at all anything is there, is like we want to make it as, thematic focus is what we are looking at. The content and the people who are joining, they should have a genuine interest in enterprise and finance. Whether it's for learning or sharing, that's fine. It doesn't depend on what level and capacity they are in. We wouldn't want to have a generic discussion on, say, conservation projects or so, because there's already a lot of platform for it. So it's just a thematic focus in terms of boundary that we have. But in terms of geography, we are completely open. So far, we kind of kept it restricted for the ELP grantees, especially as part of the AK project. But the intention going forward from FI perspective is to open it up so that it's more rich and collaborative discussion that happens in the platform. So we would open it to our country programs and partners globally. And if there are ELP grantee organization who wants to share that link locally as well, please feel free to share them. At the moment, there are few people who are kind of the owners of the group, but we can change that settings or so if that's needed. But that's more like the process part of it.
Okay, thanks. So if one of the ELP partners would like one of their partners, local organizations, individuals, to have access, they should let you know, so that you know to admit them to the group if they make a request to join.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Sarah.
Great, thank you for that. And just to say thanks to Kieran and to Rona and all the FFI team. They look a really useful set of tools. I suppose I'm building on David's question now, and that's kind of thinking about this work from an investor's perspective. I mean, do you have any kind of tips or guidance on what investors are looking to fund, or is it quite difficult to say?
Thanks for that question, Sarah, because that finance part is always the very tricky one. I would say the key aspects which the investor would look at is already in the questions which the tool that Rona produced. So it could be whether you are a legally registered entity or not, what kind of investments that you're looking at, are you a profitable business or not, what kind of risk you're taking. So there are quite a list of questions that a typical investor would look like. And those questions are the basis of that finance tool. So once you go through that process, it should filter out whether you are likely to find an impact investor, because they look at bigger investment size. But if you're not looking at that scale of investment, then probably you should go for some kind of grant finance to have your proof of concept tested. So I would say it's quite dependent on many factors, including what stages of business you are in. If you're at that initial stage, the risk levels are quite high, so less chance for a private investor to come in. But if you're able to find grant finance or low risk, low cost of capital, then, and once you have the business established, more likely then you can find investors who are looking at returns as well. And when I say returns, more like financial returns. What we have seen so far in FFI, it's much easier in that grant finance space, because then it's a financially viable business, and the impact part also is quite robust. The more it moves into that private finance space, the impact part of the business slowly start, I'm not saying reduced, but it becomes a bit shaky.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. So really, that's an important sort of key step, isn't it, to kind of work through that tool, to work out which type of investor you should target with the business model that you have. Okay, no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
If I can add to that, Sarah, as well, because the tool, you might fill out the questions and it might screen out certain types of investor. So it might suggest you should only look at a bank loan and microfinance, for example. But if you are wondering if you're wondering more about like what other criteria you might need to fill in order to attract different types of investor, feel free to go on the tool and kind of have a look under each of the headings, because there's more detailed information about whether they might require you to be profitable, how profitable, whether you'd need financial statements, whether they need to be audited, things like that. So yeah, if you go onto the tool and kind of click on the header bar, or if you scroll down, you can get more comprehensive information under each type of investor and what they might be looking for.
Thanks. Jane, you have a question.
So in the business world, I've often seen, and social enterprise world, accelerators, where groups of new enterprises are coming together right from sort of concept stage, and they're being walked through all the stages, but using tools like this along the way, and with lots of workshops that give them milestones to work to. Do you see any potential for taking it in that direction?
I would say we didn't use the word accelerator for the current project we are discussing, but essentially what we did was an accelerator work. We brought enterprise together, provided them structured training, mentoring, investment networking. It's basically what happens in an accelerator. It's just we didn't use that particular term. Within FFI, we are currently incubating around 20 enterprises. It's quite a geographical spread. Each project is unique. We initially thought of acceleration. We are not completely close to the idea, but what we have also noticed that is there is a limit to what a structured training can provide. After that, it's still a lot depends on that one-to-one mentoring. So that's something which we are aware of. So the way we have approached it in FFI is each of us have a thematic lead. So for example, Mrunmayee works on agriculture commodities, Rona works on blue economy and finance, and Vivian works on partner-led businesses and with an ecotourism focus. and they provide one-to-one mentoring support to our partners and our colleagues. It's just, we felt efficiency is good in Accelerator, but end of the day, it slowly moves towards that one-to-one mentoring at some point. Does that answer the
It
question?
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments on what we've heard?
Maybe I had one question, David, because I can see a lot of familiar faces from the project. I can see it's one from FCC, Laura from ADAPT, Georgie from Sabuco, Tibu from ProPark. I don't know if I've missed anybody, but it would be good to hear from your perspective how you felt the project went, and how do you see this knowledge product that's produced?
Right, who's going to respond from our participants on any kind of feedback?
Hi, I will try to answer. Hopefully the dogs won't stop barking. I really enjoyed this entire process that we went through. I must admit that initially I thought that it's gonna be very classical and we might not have so many new things to learn. But the team managed to lead us to through a very interesting process. I especially appreciated the Canva, and I found the session with the investors probably most useful for us because they raised some questions that maybe we didn't really think about. As for the tool that was developed, I think it's great. I think if you find the resources, it would be maybe a good idea to translate it to make it more easily accessible for organizations that don't necessarily have the language skills, but they do have the capacity to build such an entity. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. It's good to get that positive feedback and kind of notes on where improvements could be made, things to kind of think about and feed into the continuing development. Does anyone to FFI want to respond to that whilst we wait to see if anyone else has got any feedback?
No, go for, because I've been answering quite a lot.
No.
What's the question?
Just if you've got any response to what Laura says about, I mean, the value, for example, of the investor session. That's interesting. I think that was proved to be so useful, and I don't know whether maybe others have got a comment on the investment and the finance sounds to be key, and obviously the feedback from investors is important, and how you kind of capture that. I don't know whether it could be, for example, captured in a generic way, or whether it is very specific feedback responding to very specific business proposals, whether it always needs to be like that.
Some generic feedback from the investor event we had shared during the Turkey visit. So apologies if it didn't reach everybody who participated in the event. We'll definitely share, because they definitely had feedbacks. And I wouldn't say they were very specific to a particular business model. It was more like a generic comment. I would say, like, one thing which definitely stood out was how do you measure some of the impact, which is something I think as a community within conservation we quite struggle with. But just understanding those aspects, because the way they think is more like a black and white. They want to really see what is the impact of their work. So just strengthening those impact indicators, how best and robust that is being measured, is something which definitely came up. And also there was as we just mentioned earlier, even they were suggesting like it definitely needs more grant finance at the beginning. Before then, it can move on to a private investment. So that was one of the other generic feedback. Then the third that I distinctly remember is also is we are starting an enterprise, but this enterprise is in a very competitive marketplace. There are other actors who are offering similar businesses. So really clarifying what is your value proposition? How are you distinct from the other business and the offerings the others are already providing in the marketplace? That's really important. So having a clear plan in terms of market strategy and communicating that to people who want to fund you, I think is another important piece that probably we all have to strengthen.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think one other point that also came up quite strongly was investment readiness of the proposals. I think what they look for is also a proof of concept, if at all it is tested, in terms of showing that this kind of an investment can result in the positive biodiversity or social impact that we are looking at. And also in terms of numbers and the figures, in terms of projections, financial projections, or in terms of what exact investment is required, why it is required, in terms of the articulating that justification for that kind of investments and also the projections, that also came out in some cases.
Thanks. It sounds from some of what I was hearing there that it might also almost be quite helpful to have almost a kind of a crib list, a checklist of questions that an investor is likely to be asking you, you know, so that you can kind of be prepared for that investor meeting, the kind of typical, you know, like when you prepare for an interview. Well, it would be an interview, I guess, of, you know, what do you need to have, you know, so you can respond immediately and positively to the kind of questions that an investor will ask.
Yeah, and sorry, we didn't mention that, David, because there's quite a lot of outputs that we have produced in the course of the project. One was that FAQ document, which Rona produced, which we shared with the participants who were actually, you know, going to pitch their ideas. So that FAQ is already there. It's something which we can share after this meeting. And if it's useful for, you know, other events which ELP grantees are going to go for, you know, it could be a good start.
Yeah. Any other questions? Or any other experiences to contribute or feedback? Maybe I'll just have one other question then, if I may. I just wonder, from FFI's experience, you say you've got 20 businesses in your kind of portfolio pipeline. What is your typical success rate from, you know, when you start from the very beginning in terms of evaluating a project? How many see their way through to being financed and set up as sustainable businesses? I just, you know, wondering what the expectations should be.
It's hard. we honestly, we haven't run a lot of analysis on the success rate. I think ideally FFI would like to have a 60% success rate. That's the way we are approaching it. I think in social enterprise world, and there is academic literatures on this topic, that success rate is even more lower. But I think it's all about having that entrepreneurial mindset that we can make it work. Because business needs a lot of energy. It has to push through challenges. So what we don't want is for the people, practitioners, to feel like we should give up soon. No, I don't think we should do that. We should always try our best and then see what happens. That's one point. The second challenge that and this is a very important challenge, and I think I should just mention it in the meeting, is that once you know that the business is not successful, you should be ready to move away from it very quickly, because we have seen quite a lot of enterprises which are not working, like it's not financially viable, which has gone over, say, 5 years timeline. And there is no clear pathway in terms of being profitable. So we should be less attached emotionally and then think more pragmatically and look at other business opportunities. I think that's a very hard decision for somebody who has invested a lot of time, energy, and we work with our local actors, with communities or landowners. So there's some kind of expectation management that's needed. We understand everything, but we should also be completely aware that if the grant runs out, it will collapse. So before we get to that extreme level, we should definitely exit and look for using the assets, knowledge that was generated through the process, being used for identifying another opportunity which has more likelihood of being successful. I didn't fully give you an answer on the percentage, David, but I think it's a more nuanced answer to it.
Thanks, and I think you've kind of answered the question there, which I think is what I was getting at, is really that, you know, I guess all of us, you shouldn't expect 100% success rate. We need to be prepared for failure and not be discouraged, because it's a normal part of trying to develop businesses. You know, that at least nearly half the businesses you're suggesting, even with the support through a project, are not likely to really get off the ground, all the business ideas. So, you know, really we should all be prepared for that. Okay, any other questions? Last chance. No? In that case, I suggest we close 5 minutes early. I don't know whether anyone has got any kind of final comments from the panel in the other room. No, in which case, I mean, it just remains for me, I guess, to thank everyone from FF5 for this project. Thank you for participating, to encourage you to join the LinkedIn group and to download those tools and to try them out, and indeed to provide feedback to FF5 as you use them and test them. Yeah, thanks for participating, and we look forward to hearing more about your businesses in due course.